Well, two for sale signs south of the border now in what is increasingly becoming a trend amid growing political tensions and economic uncertainty. Some Canadian snowbirds are packing up and saying goodbye to their U.S. homes for good.
And the rising cost of living down south have many snowbirds thinking of getting rid of their properties. February 15th, 2025. The phone call.
Snowbirds are flying north. According to a South Florida real estate agent, Canadians are flocking out of the state.
All of them. 6 months of political grandstanding had accomplished what hurricanes, recessions, and pandemics never could. Complete economic capitulation by Florida's most valuable customer base. The state that built its winter economy on reliable northern neighbors just watched $6. $6 billion walk away forever. The exodus started quietly. Booking cancellations, property sales, rental agreements terminated early. What seemed like scattered individual decisions revealed itself as coordinated economic rejection. Canadian seasonal residents weren't taking a break from Florida. They were divorcing it entirely. January 2025 brought the first warning signs. Rental bookings down 31%. Property searches down 45%. Airline reservations plummeting 38%. Any rational government would have recognized the pattern and adjusted course immediately. Instead, Florida politicians decided doubling down on anti-Canadian rhetoric represented strength rather than stupidity. Politicians celebrated, while accountants calculated disaster. State leadership watched the data and chose escalation over economics. The miscalculation destroyed decades of carefully built economic relationships overnight. Florida's winter economy operated on a simple principle. Reliable seasonal residents who spent substantial money over extended stays generated revenue streams that sustained entire communities through off-peak months. Canadian snowbirds epitomized this model, arriving in November, staying through March, integrating into local communities while maintaining properties year-round. Politicians assumed this relationship was unbreakable. Canadians needed Florida's weather more than Florida needed Canadian money. The assumption proved catastrophically wrong. The numbers behind Florida's self-inflicted economic disaster reveal stunning incompetence. $6. $6 billion in annual Canadian spending vanished in 6 months. Property tax revenue from foreign seasonal residents dropped $2. $1 billion. Winter employment traditionally supported by seasonal visitors disappeared across entire counties. Service sector jobs, restaurants, retail, entertainment faced unprecedented layoffs as their primary customer base evaporated. Medical centers that schedule procedures around seasonal resident patterns face 60% revenue drops. Canadian snowbirds routinely planned surgeries, treatments, and specialist consultations during Florida winters. Dental practices, outpatient centers, and specialty clinics watch patient volumes crater as their most reliable demographics disappear. Canadians are making a mass exodus, and now businesses on our Gulf Coast saying they're feeling the impact. This comes as the U.S. clamps down on Canadians visiting, requiring background checks and fingerprints if they plan to stay more than 30 days in Florida. It's estimated each year more than 60,000 Canadians flock to Florida. Businesses say feelings like this are having an impact on them. It is having not only a negative impact on the tourism market, but business as a whole. You need those extra visits to really kick that profit margin to a different level. Construction industries built around seasonal property maintenance collapse. Canadian owners religiously upgraded, renovated, and improved Florida properties. Contractors who specialize in snowbird properties report 70% revenue losses as maintenance contracts vanish alongside the customers who funded them. Regional airports designed around seasonal charter flights struggle with massive capacity underutilization. Airlines cut routes by 40% as demand disappears. Car rental agencies position fleets for winter surges face excess inventory and declining bookings. The logistics infrastructure supporting seasonal tourism unravels completely. Property markets and seasonal communities crater as fundamental demand disappears. Real estate brokers report inventory surges as Canadian owners liquidate Florida holdings. Condos purchased specifically for snowbird rentals become worthless investments when snowbirds stop coming. Property values in heavily seasonal areas drop 30% as sellers flood markets while buyers vanish. Commercial real estate faces parallel destruction. Strip malls, restaurants, and entertainment venues in seasonal communities lose their economic foundation. Lease defaults surge as businesses close permanently rather than operate at unsustainable capacity levels during what should be peak revenue months. Local governments watch tax bases evaporate while infrastructure costs remain constant. Municipal bonds still require payment. Emergency services still need funding, and road maintenance still demands resources. But the economic activity supporting these obligations disappears daily. International competitors capitalize mercilessly on Florida's political suicide. Portuguese tourism authorities launched sophisticated campaigns targeting displaced Canadian snowbirds. Mediterranean coastal cities offer similar climates, superior cultural attractions, and governments that actively welcome foreign seasonal residents. Mexico streamlined visa processes specifically for Canadian retirees, while Caribbean nations coordinate marketing, emphasizing political stability and economic welcome. Every destination learns from
Some Canadian snowbirds who every year flock to Florida for the winter months are now trying to sell their winter getaways, blaming Donald Trump a bit.
Many Canadian snowbirds are turning away from the Sunshine State.
There's a lot of Canadians selling, so I do have way more listings that I'm used to.
There's been a lot of talk about boycotting the United States since the election of U.S. President Donald Trump and his talk about making Canada the 51st state.
From the Sunshine State, there's a lot of Canadian selling, so I do have way more listings than I'm used to. There's been a lot of talk about boycotting the United States since the election of U.S. President Donald Trump and his talk about making Canada the 51st state. The replacement economics reveal Florida's strategic stupidity. Canadian seasonal residents average $33,000 household, spending across 6-month stays. Domestic tourists average $1,200 per week-long vacation. Replacing one Canadian household requires 28 American families annually, volume that doesn't exist at necessary scale. American seasonal residents represent tiny fractions compared to Canadian. Snowbirds. Domestic second homeowners use properties differently, spending less on local services and integrating minimally into community economies. The economic models don't translate, the revenue streams don't replace, and the math guarantees permanent loss. Political leadership remains completely divorced from economic reality throughout this crisis. State officials continue defending policies that destroyed billions in economic activity, while press conferences celebrate America First tourism as unemployment rises and tax revenues collapse. Legislative priorities focus on symbolic victories, while communities face extinction. Bills targeting foreign property ownership advance, while bankruptcy filings surge across tourism-dependent areas. Politicians score domestic political points, while entire economic sectors disintegrate. Governor's office statements attribute economic disruption to global market forces. Anything except acknowledging connections between hostile rhetoric and customer exodus. Accepting responsibility would contradict core political narratives. So, economic reality gets ignored while communities suffer. Internal documents leaked to press reveal the true scope of political panic behind public denials. Tourism Board communications show desperate industry pleas for policy reversals. Private meetings feature stark warnings about economic consequences, while public statements continue defending destructive decisions. The disconnect between private reality and public position guarantees continued dysfunction. Political incentive structures prevent course correction despite mounting evidence. Admitting mistakes validates opposition criticism while energizing political challengers. Short-term political survival requires maintaining positions that guarantee long-term economic destruction. Industry leaders beg privately for change while supporting officials publicly, ensuring continued economic deterioration as political necessity overrides economic rationality. The appeal of Florida has washed away for Canadians like Natalie Manuso. The Quebecers sold their condo north of Fort Lauderdale last month, fed up with U.S. President Donald Trump. Manuso is part of a wave of Canadians getting rid of their U.S. properties. The real estate exodus is happening from east to west. Dale McMullen just sold his winter home in Arizona. The last straw was Trump's repeated 51st state comments. Annexation threats, the trade war, and a battered Canadian dollar are pushing snowbirds out. Canadians top the list of foreign buyers in the U.S., with most of the purchases in Florida and Arizona. But escaping the cold appears less attractive when the U.S.-Canada relationship is also frigid. The transformation appears permanent rather than cyclical. Infrastructure investments become stranded assets as demand permanently disappears. Buildings, airports, and service networks sized for vanished seasonal populations represent irreversible capital misallocation. Rebuilding trust requires sustained political stability that current leadership cannot provide. Seasonal residents who established alternative destinations won't return simply because rhetoric moderates. Economic relationships, once severed through deliberate hostility, require years of consistent behavior to rebuild. International reputation damage persists beyond policy reversals as competitor destinations maintain structural advantages through proven stability, superior service, and competitive pricing. Florida weaponized economics against itself through pure political incompetence. The assumption that Canadian snowbirds needed Florida more than Florida needed Canadian money proved spectacularly wrong. Empty properties, unemployed workers, and collapsing tax revenues document the true cost of treating customers like political enemies. The snowbirds migrated to destinations offering respect alongside sunshine, while the money followed their wings. But the broader implications extend far beyond Florida's borders. Other states watch this economic suicide and face their own choice. Continue prioritizing political theater over economic stability, or learn from Florida's catastrophic example. International investors study Florida's collapse as a case study in political risk assessment. The message spreads globally that American political systems can destroy economic sectors overnight through pure ideological commitment. Tourism boards worldwide adjust strategies knowing that political hostility trumps economic logic in American decision-making. The ripple effects are just beginning. Florida's tourism infrastructure collapse creates opportunities for every competitor destination, while serving as a warning for every American state dependent on international visitors.